All right, well, it looks like it's recording, and so welcome everyone. So my name is Michael Edge, and I do live here in Arizona. And the reason I mention that is not just to brag that we use salt for margaritas and not snow in our driveway, but it is more so to say that you guys have hit the jackpot. I feel like y'all have lucked out because we get to bring some gear here that I would not want to fly with this stuff. You know, like it is possible, but at the same token though, should I claim like a C-stand as like an accessory and say, hey, it's on my lap? You know, I don't get to do that. Instead, we actually get to bring it here, so you guys lucked out in that regard. And also, since I am recording this, and I'm very paranoid about field recorders just either dying or pausing midway through, I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys my contact info, which if you're here in person, so thank you for joining us, whether you're online or in person. Isn't that the line we all use now? But if you are in person, then you got the handout. On the back, it has my contact info. This is how you can get hold of me. I love to chat about this stuff, so please reach out. But if you are listening online, then it's spelled like this. So it's Michael at michaeledgemedia.com, and it's Michael, A-E-L, because for those of us with theology degrees in here, know that L, like Elohim, El Shaddai, is the name of God. So do not misspell the A-E-L. That is very offensive to God, apparently. And then we have Edge, like the guitarist for U2, even though his name is Dave Evans. But whatever, he's been the Edge longer than I have. So it's Michael at michaeledgemedia.com. That's how you can get hold of me. So if the field recorder dies, which I'm already paranoid, let me look at it. No, it's still going. Hey, that's great. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So once again, I said that I live here in Arizona. A little bit about me. So I have a wife. Her name is Krista, and she has not divorced me yet, so that's really good news. Been married for almost 15 years, and we also have we have been very, very blessed, a little too blessed with 5 children, and so it's a ride. It really is. Age range all the way from like 12 to almost 8 months, and so it's quite the ride here. But I moved out here. Well, see here, 13 and a half years ago in 2008, back when, all the way when W was still president, and I had moved out here from the great state of Texas. Now, a word about Texas, for those of you who don't know. It is impossible to have too much Texas pride. However, I would say that I have the appropriate amount of Texas pride. So let me just ask, where are you from in Texas? Oh, the DFW area. Okay, very good, very good. So I grew up in West Houston and Katy there. But I will say that in our staff meeting a few weeks ago, someone had said, oh yeah, Ash Wednesday is on March 2nd. I said, oh, Texas Independence Day. Amazing. There's got to be a tie-in about freedom, and is there? No, there's not. Okay. But I've been at this same church, did my DC internship, and you know how DC stands for Director of Christian Everything. And so part of what I've done is all sorts of things, mainly, you know, youth ministry, but of course all the tech and the media ministry. We just dove right into it really early on, like even way before the pandemic. We were buying up used Blackmagic cameras and and I just got way too into videography. I just became obsessed with it, and it's just my passion. It really is my passion of using media to share Jesus, and that has just everything that I've done for the last decade has just been all about that. And as a result, I've learned a few things along the way, and so I'm sure at this point, because, well, COVID, we've all done video work. You know, my favorite was March of 2020. You know, all my friends are texting me, asking me questions about, well, how do I edit this? How do what format should I export it in? And I just thought to myself, oh dear Lord, we're all doing this. We're all doing this. And so, but also though, we've all been there where we've done some things, and we thought to ourselves, okay, well, you know, how can we continue to do this, even though that most people are still returning you know, in person. And also the really neat thing about my particular context is that, so I'm just at an LCMS church just right up the road here, but we're slightly smaller than Christ Lutheran, just by a little bit, or by a lot. And so we're a medium, small-sized church, and the best thing about that is there is a myth out there that unless you are Elevation in North Carolina, or Willow, or Saddleback, or whoever, then you don't have the resources. You can't make a good video unless you're like, this multi-million-dollar budget. And that is just simply not true. I mean, like, we could prove with just a few things, and some of these things cost money, but honestly, you'd be surprised how some of these things don't. We can be able to craft a really cool video. All right, so let's go on to the next slide here. Already crossed that first one off the list here. There we go. But basically, we're going to talk a little bit about I'm just going to give you guys one tip, basically, on each of these things. So composition, how you frame the shot, things about, mainly I'm going to be focusing on background, talk a little bit about lighting, and there's a ton of different lighting scenarios, but I'm just going to give you my personal favorite, the one that I use 10 out of 10 times, a quick thing on audio, and even just a quick thing on editing. So, once again, now when I gave this same presentation a couple years ago, I was having to convince everyone, and this was in February 2020, so I was having to convince everyone of, here's why you should use video and media in your ministry, and now we all know, all right? But just imagine this, right, like how we could use not only filming and streaming worship services, you can and probably should do that on some level, but how can you use media in worship services, in creative ways, not just announcements, not just sermon bumpers, but what are other things that you could be doing? Certainly your website, certainly social media, and then of course the big question is how else. And so let me just ask you guys, how do you guys currently use video in your ministry? Does anyone want to share what they currently do? Yeah, go right ahead.
So we started before COVID. We actually were ahead of the curve and upgraded to just a single camera system that live streamed one angle, one shot, there it is, and whatever was on the computer.
Yeah.
And now we're up to we have four camera system with another. All of those are PTZs, and then we have one that is just for following the pastor and things like that.
Cool. Yeah.
So, and our process, the reason why we went up so fast was the fact that when COVID hit, people saw the benefit of that, and that it can actually bring something to the ministry. And so our endowment committee said, well, do whatever you need to do. Oh, yeah. Gosh, okay, here we go.
Green light, baby.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And
cool.
Now it's not a matter of whether or not we should. It's a matter of how can we make it even better. And so these type of sessions make a big difference on it. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing. Any others? Yeah, go right ahead.
My family has a YouTube channel on how to read scripture well in church, and my brother and I live stream our church service.
Cool. That's really neat. Thanks for sharing. Yes, Mr. Ryman.
We've used videos when we were supposed to have our school kids in church singing, and so instead of having them physically present because of mandates and stuff like that, we would film them ahead of time and did some kind of unique things like that, and then use that as like the offering piece as a video kind of thing. But again, we had to be very unique with how we did the shots. Otherwise, it would just be kind of a snooze fest, like watching that. So,
oh, sure.
We kind of learn and watch other videos and go, okay, how can we make this interesting, visually interesting?
Cool. Very good. Very good. Yeah, go right ahead.
Mostly for live stream, but during COVID, my living room became our studio. Because I videotaped my wife doing the children's message, Sunday school lessons,
cool.
and then editing it and sending that out
cool.
to our website.
Yeah, it's exciting. Good. So my favorite thing to do, well, I guess I'll show it to you here in 1 second, but I will show you guys this really quickly, is that the biggest thing I can give you guys, I'm not going to go into a ton of the why, because I think we already know it, but one thing I'm going to give to you guys is a nugget to take away whenever you have a framework for what we're trying to do and how we're trying to accomplish it, is this main word right here is to inspire your people. And really, that's such a great way to use media to either logically show something like with numbers or facts or figures, or especially with video, you can show the emotional appeal. We get grandparents on camera on Grandparents' Day talking about the legacy that they built. It just pulls at the heartstrings, right? But the big deal here is to inspire for anything. And so for me, this is like the rule for especially video announcements. And I say video announcements, it could be in-person announcements as well, is just simply to inspire. And whether this is a sermon bumper, certainly a testimonial, certainly a building campaign. If you're trying to motivate people to contribute to a capital campaign in some way, then the thing that you want to do is you want to use video here to actually motivate them, to inspire them. The reason I mention this is because there's a guy, if you don't already follow him on YouTube, you should. His name is Brady Shearer, and he's from Pro Church Tools in Canada somewhere. And he's got this whole thing about you want to motivate people, you want to inspire them, but don't just dump details. So let me give you an example. Hey guys, we have the church rummage sale coming up March 30th at 8 a.m. Now, as soon as I have said that, you're all going to forget it. All right? Like, do not assume, hey, we said it one time in the video announcements, therefore everyone has it memorized. Wrong. They've already forgotten it. And also, date, time, and place, how motivating is that? Is that inspiring? No, of course not. No one's motivated to go to it or give to it. Instead, tell a story. So for me, I would say something like this. You know, the other day I was walking around in my home late at night, and I stepped on a big Lego set. And I just thought to myself, what is that church rummage sale? Because I want to make some donations, you know, something like that. Incorporate humor into it, but also to inspire people. And so if you've done your job effectively to motivate people, to inspire people, then think of it like a movie trailer. So a movie trailer, by the end of it, you're inspired to go see the movie. And then what you're conditioned to do is you're conditioned to go to the website and find the actual show times, the actual details on the website. So similarly, whenever the new Spider-Man movie comes out, it does not say, here's all the showings in your city and all the times. Instead, we are just conditioned now to go to the newspaper or to go to the website. So similarly with anything that you're doing, if you're doing video announcements or a building campaign or whatever, I mean, you can give it a date, you can, it's not wrong, but at the same token, though, don't really expect anyone to memorize it, and also it's not motivating. Instead, condition them to go to your website or the church bulletin for all the details. Which also means, by the way, a caveat, that your church website has to be up to date. It certainly does. So if you're going to say, go to the website, and then the information's not on there, then, you know, obviously you're shooting yourself in the foot. All right. So, yeah, there we go. I've talked a lot about that. But let me show you just really quickly. So my favorite thing to use media in church is, so my whole thing is humor, is comedy. That's like the genre of movies that I grew up on, and it's the thing that I really cling to. And so, and our church is actually pretty receptive to some of the jokes. Like even for last week for Super Bowl Sunday, in our video announcements, we made fun of Tom Brady as many times as we could because it's just funny, and we were just able to do it. And not every context is like that. But for me, when I think of motivating people to do something, you know, I try to create something that can go on social that people actually want to share. And, you know, if it's a talking head, some people will share that, but I try to do other things. And so let's see if the audio works here. Oh, it is. Hold on. There it is.
100%.
Battery is 100%. Good to know. Okay, so let's try this right here. So this is a promo we did for Easter last year.
Kids, come on, it's time for church.
Yeah, kids, come on, it's Easter.
I got it.
Wait, I have an idea. Let's do what we used to do. Let's go to church.
As I leave the house, get in the car, put on shoes.
And pants.
But, Dad, it's been.
Yes, it's been a year.
But Dad, that means you must.
I know what I must do. It's time.
He has risen. He is risen indeed.
So by the way, I did consult 3 LCMS pastors, and they said it's probably not heresy, so I said, all right, I'll go with it. So here's another one we did.
Why the synodical convention?
No, well, I don't think our church is quite on that radar. So maybe I shouldn't have shown that here. This is such a public forum. Oh well. Here you go. Here's one more that we did.
Wow, Don, can you believe it's almost Christmas Eve already?
I know. Although, I'm kind of excited.
Yeah.
I'm going to church. It's a very special night, and we come together, and we sing Christmas songs, and there's a special message, and we end the night with candlelight.
Wow, candlelight.
Mm-hmm.
That does sound nice.
It's very nice. And you know what?
What?
You should come with us. You should come to church.
Wait, what? You want me to go to church
Yes.
on Christmas
On
Eve?
Christmas Eve, come and learn about Jesus and the hope that he brings.
Well, I'll tell you what, Don, I'll make a deal with you.
Okay.
If you want me to come to church with you on Christmas Eve,
Okay.
why don't you go over there and stick your tongue to that flagpole?
What are you talking about? I just want you to go to church.
All right, I double dare you. In fact, I double dog dare you in the middle of this pandemic to walk over to that flagpole and stick your tongue to it.
There's nothing worse than a double dog dare, except for,
Well, I triple.
No! Don't
Yeah,
say it.
I triple dog dare. Oh, I can't believe you really did it. All right, I'll go to church. Uh-huh. What?
My tongue is stuck.
It sounded like you said your tongue was stuck.
My tongue is stuck.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
All right, this is going to hurt a little. Ready?
Oh.
Ready? I don't know what we're going to do.
Help.
Your tongue is stuck. Oh my gosh, we're going to need some help. We need an adult.
Hey, what do you kids do?
Well, Don here, he accidentally got his tongue stuck to the flagpole. Well, I did triple dog dare him. Well, he wanted me to go to church with him, and I told him the only way I was going is if he stuck his tongue to the flagpole.
You got issues, man. Go to church. Yeah. I triple dog dare.
So there you go. The best part about that for me was just that we got to use Emilio is the kid's name at the end, and he's my now 8-year-old son. So we had a lot of fun shooting that. So basically, it kind of brings up this question right here: why spend time and therefore maybe some money? And the ultimate answer is because you can derail your audience. Now, originally when I looked up like trains going off tracks, it kind of got violent. So I picked like the little cute Thomas the train picture here. But you guys get the idea, right? Part of communication, as we all know, is that you're already dealing with an uphill battle. Like, there's cell phones going off in church all the time. People are complaining it's too hot or too cold. It's and then they think to themselves, wait, what about that project that I have this week? And they tune out for 10 seconds. Did I leave the stove on? We already have an uphill battle with distractions, just in general with communication. And I think here's the thing. So it is totally appropriate, like if you're going through your church parking lot and you just need to pull out your phone and just do a quick, hey guys, I just thought of something, I just want to share this with you. Everyone gets that it's a phone and that you're in your parking lot, and everyone gets that and everyone's fine with it, all right? But they all get that it's an iPhone thing. But whenever you're actually trying to do something that looks produced, and let's say that let's say that it just looks distracting. Let's say there's something going on in the background, like someone's like walking around or it's moving. Or let's say that the audio especially is the big deal. That if you can't hear the person talking and everyone's like leaning forward and then it gets like really loud all of a sudden because the sound guy's cranking it, and then we didn't turn the air conditioning off, and so in the background there's like this big rumble hum going on. Whenever we do that, those kinds of things are the things that just absolutely distract distract people. And so the reason why we do this is not just so that way we could be like, hey, look what camera we have, man, because I hate that kind of talk, but rather it is all about, we just don't want to derail our audience, all right? So let's go right now into just a couple quick things on composition. So if we look at a background, and so for me, one of the things that I like to do, actually, would someone be as kind as to flip the lights off, and even let's close the door, because that's bringing in some light as well. And this projector is not as bright, but that's all right. But what we see here is, I like to do something called a shallow depth of field, meaning that the subject is in focus, the background's a little bit blurrier. You get that whenever you work with either a DSLR or a cinema camera that you can slap a lens on, and especially if it has something called a wide aperture on it, a low f-stop, then you're able to create this kind of a look here. And so for me, this is something where it's a very pleasing background. It's not distracting. You're focused on the subject. You can have things like, if it's in, same sort of deal, a blurred out background. It's interesting to look at, but at the same token, it's not distracting, so similar kind of thing. This is something shot in our church, but you can do a lobby in this way, and even just a regular, just a wall, but it's just visually appealing. My favorite kind of thing is whenever I go to some of these mega churches that do invest in the lighting up front and be able to stand back. For me, it's a lot of fun, because you don't have to do any work. It's just you just tell someone to turn on the lighting board, and then it looks great. But you could also do a studio shot here. So this is a lot of what we do. So we've just got a blue paper background, and then to create this gradient look, we have something called a scoop light, which we bought on B&H for like $20, but it's very similar to just like a work light that you can get at Home Depot that's just got the round kind of cone to it, and you just put that behind the subject, and people won't even know that it's there. And so this is something that you could totally shoot in a broom closet. You need probably, depending on how wide your lens is for your camera, but you need probably 8 feet or 6 feet even, and then a few feet the other direction. But just get yourself a paper background and get yourself a scoop light that goes behind the subject, and then you've got a very visually appealing thing. So yes, we also do videos for our preschool, and they are the cutest and most nauseating things to produce. But one of the things that we do here, I really like, of course, the Christmas lights. Ooh, isn't it? Oh, Christmas lights. You can use not just for Christmas, but aren't they just so pretty just to have something like that? Similar kind of shot here. This one is a little bit, we decided to go for a wider aspect ratio, but it's very similar to the other shot that I had over there. And so now we're going to get into absolutely my favorite thing to talk about, which of course is lighting. So basically my one pro tip here is to diffuse, 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 diffuse. So these terms that we're going to use here is something called hard lighting and soft lighting. Now hard lighting, which I'll demonstrate what that looks like in a second, but as you can tell with the subject on the left here, that we have something called, these shadows are very defined. And so you can see we have things like a nose shadow and a neck shadow right here, and they're very well defined. In fact, if you could see the background, if this was wider, then you would also see her head completely carved out on the wall, because it just produces that hard of a light. Now, the problem with hard lighting is that even though it's very dramatic, it is also very unflattering, okay? It just certainly is. And by the way, every single wrinkle, pore, whatever, shows up. And for everyone who I work with, especially 99% of the people I work with are they're volunteers, or they've never been on camera before, and they're petrified about being on camera. And then whenever they see themselves on the screen on Sunday, if they look like this, they're never going to talk to you again. All right? Certainly never want to do a video with you again. And even with some of the people who I have worked with that are very comfortable on camera because they've done it, they're even worse because they have their image to protect and preserve, and they don't want things going social with their name attached to it that looks bad. And so that's what we have over here, whereas we have soft lighting, which is therefore diffused. You can see the chin and neck still has a shadow. So what we're doing here is we're lighting, in this case, from the left side, that produces her face to be brighter on one side and darker on the other side. So we call this a contrast ratio. In fact, if you had a light meter, what you could do is you can meter the light on this side, meter the light on that side, and if you have about a 1-to-2 ratio is typically what people go for in like a cinematic look, as they'll call it. So twice as bright on this side than that side, then that's ultimately what you want. So you still have a nose shadow, you still have a chin shadow, however, it's much less defined. Instead, it has this kind of soft, diffused, and it also kind of wraps around the face in a very beautiful and very flattering way, if that makes any sense. So for us to proceed, however, we do need, oh look, we have the gift of this. So if I was shooting in here, the first thing I would do is I would take something called Cinefoil, which is like aluminum foil but black wrap, and I would just tape that. That's certainly what I would do. But I did not do that. Did not notice that. Okay, so let's do this. Let's actually bring forward, does anyone want to be a model today? Does anyone want to add that to the resume? Okay, come on up. Let's give her a round of applause. Hey, come on forward. And by the way, I don't think I got your name, or I already forgot it. What's your name?
Annika.
Annika, welcome. All right, so go ahead and have a seat on that chair. And actually, I tell you what, I say that, but let's do this. Let's bring this chair just a little bit forward. Why don't you put it kind of like right about here or so. All right, so Annika, I'm going to introduce you to this Amaran 100D light, which I do have as some gear recommendations on the back of your sheet here. And the best thing about this particular light is that it only costs $200. Now I know some of you guys are like already walking out the room. What do you mean only $200? That's cheap, okay? It's actually made by a company called Aperture, and Aperture has the 120D Mark II. If you can afford it, you should get it. This is the much cheaper version of it. It is also LED, so you could use halogen. If you want to use halogen, then I used this bad boy for years. This thing cost, I think, $130 or something like that, and it's a 750 watt halogen, and it is the sun beating down on you. And so whenever I would do like a 30-minute youth talk, I would just be profusely sweating at the end, and it was gross, okay? So no one wants to see that. Considering that this is about the same price as this, I would say this in 2022, get the LED because it's cooler, and it also has a high CRI rating on it, color rendering index. What that means is that the actual quality of the light is going to be a really good quality light that's going to look really great on skin tones. Now, Annika, here's what I want you to do. I want you to close your eyes because I'm pretty sure that my business insurance ran out and I don't need lawsuits, okay? Are you ready? All right, so on set you would say sparking. That's the polite thing to do if you don't want to blind people. All right, so here we go. This is, I think, 75 watts, something like that, but it's the equivalent of a 1K. So it's 1,000 watts. You guys ready for this? Here we go. Hey, there we go. So welcome everyone. This is called hard lighting. So this is exactly what the lady on the left would experience. So we have very hard shadows. You can even see on the wall over here. It just simply has that. All right. Now, what we're going to do is to make it more flattering, however, is that we're going to take the same light and we're going to take beadboard. Now, if you live in Burbank, California, good for you. You can go to a place that locally sells something called beadboard. The rest of us, however, go to Home Depot and you buy styrofoam, and you buy them in the 8x8 rectangle. You cut them in half and then cut the ends off to make a circle. Now, why a circle and not a square? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Because there's something called Eyelight. You see this especially when you get really close. Whenever you actually see the pupil, it'll actually have a circle in it, which is way more flattering to look at than a square or a rectangle. I can even tell you that I'll watch like some big budget stuff, and you'll see a rectangle in the eyes, and here I am like in theaters standing up going, they didn't even cut the ends off? Like, who named the cinematographer? I need to send a strongly worded email. All right? It is not that hard to cut off the ends. And you should. It's very flattering because your eyes are round, right? And therefore, the circle is round as well. Now, I cut in the middle so I could do a handle. So that way, especially for outdoors, I could actually hold it and I could walk with the subject backwards while we're filming someone walking down the street. A few years ago, however, it cracked in half, and I like it. I don't know why they don't just do this in general, because now it's much easier to travel with. But essentially, in this guy, I think I made this in like 2014. It's still, I mean, you can tell it's been through everything, right? All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to position this in front of Annika. We're going to raise it up a little bit. And a quick word on this thing right here. This is called a C-stand, a Century stand, and is absolutely my favorite thing. If I could die and be reincarnated as anything, it would be a C-stand. It really would. But we don't believe in reincarnation, so. But what we do have is we also have this thing that's called a quacker clamp, a beak clamp as they call it. And the reason is because it's simply just a vice grip with two pieces of metal on it, and for whatever reason, and a baby pin to fit through a C-stand. For whatever reason, they charge you $80 for it. And I just bought it. Everyone else says you can make it. I don't know how, so I overpaid for it. But what's nice about it though is that it can, because it's got such a wide clamp on it, you can put all sorts of bounces or all sorts of flags or materials in it that you can hold up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take, once again, our 1K light. So this is what I'm saying, guys. That some of this stuff costs money, but some of this does not. Oh wow, look at the build quality on that. So this transformer box here ended up, the little wire ended up breaking on me, so that's a lot of fun. That's all right. We'll put this right here. And so similarly, I'm just going to kind of put it, well, yeah, probably more like that. And this right over here. Pardon me, you guys. And then we're just going to take our light, and similarly, now whenever we bounce, now all of a sudden, the lighting is much more diffused and it's much softer. In fact, the test that I always like to do is I always like to put a finger, and then, I mean, just look how diffused that is right there. And that's just going to give you that beautiful wraparound on her nose and chin shadow. In fact, go ahead and look forward. Yeah, see, that's wonderful right there. So then, the even better thing that you can do is you could buy something called half-density soft frost. So this is not a shower curtain. However, you could go to Bed Bath & Beyond and buy yourself a frosted shower can liner, and you should, because it's $10. That's a lot more than 10. And then what you can do is you could essentially double diffuse. And this is called a booklight setup in Hollywood. It is absolutely my favorite lighting setup. And yes, you can travel with it. It's a little bit insane, but you can. But also, if you just have a room where all this just stays set up, then just do this and just keep it set up all the time. All right, so we're going to go up on the C-stand. Now, I say C-stands, but you don't have to use a C-stand, obviously. If you can find anything that you could rig to hold this, then use that. These things are just nice, and I like them, but you don't have to use a C-stand. So you could also use a really strong mic stand if you're in a pinch. You can just go into the worship leader's storage closet and do not tell him or her that you're using it. and then use it, and then try to remember to return it. All right, so now what we have here, and this totally works, because if you have the camera like right here, you won't even see this diffusion paper. But now, if you guys can see it, now we have a really, really soft light on the nose and the chin shadow over here that just wraps around the face. And so this right here is called a book light setup. Ideally, though, they want in a little bit of a V, but I've never done that. That's why they call it a book light. But essentially, we bounce off of styrofoam, and then we go through a shower curtain or Roscoe half-density soft frost. So let me pause here for 1 second. Does anyone have any questions so far, thoughts or comments? Yeah, go right ahead.
If you're just recording something on the webcam,
Yes.
You wouldn't use this kind of a setup, but you would
Sure.
but you would still try to bounce it off something in front of you.
Yeah, you can. Although here's the thing is that it almost doesn't matter what camera that you have. I mean, now we use Blackmagic, and I have the Pocket 6K, and I just love that camera. But honestly, you could put whatever. We've even used this setup with an iPhone, just right here on a tripod, and the lighting looks really, really good on an iPhone. The only thing with a small sensor, so a webcam or an iPhone, is that because the sensor is really small, it doesn't bring in a ton of light, and as a result of that, you're just going to need to just make sure that this light setup is just as close to the subject as possible, so that way you're just flooding the subject with lots of light. But yeah.
No, the reason I was asking is that I'm thinking of a different scenario than you are here.
Okay.
It's when I'm online giving a class, and it has to be recorded for other people.
Oh, yes.
So I don't have a choice. I have to be in front of the computer, and I have to have
yes.
DSLR. Mm-hmm. I have to be right there, and it's very close.
Sure.
In that case, with the lighting, what would you do?
So I think what I would do is, so like I assume you're probably like at your desk or something of that nature, right? I think what I would do in that case then is I would just discreetly as possible put up a softbox, and I'll show you guys my favorite softbox, although it's probably too big for an office. Although I say that, it'd be cool if it was in my office, but I would probably do that. I know everyone has done ring lights, and I am a fan of ring lights, but the one thing with the ring light is just once again you see it in the eyes, and especially like there's one, I was editing for Aaron Schust. I had to edit something for him, and here it was like this, and it had big ring lights in his eyes, and I was like, I felt like hypnotized. I was like, yes, Aaron, whatever you say, Aaron, I will go to your concert, Aaron. It was creepy, and so I would stay away from ring. Honestly, just try to mount like a softbox, or just put on a stand. That's probably what I would do. Just that way you're bringing a little extra light. And depending where your window is, you could open up some blinds and just use the natural light there. But also that requires sunlight, and the sun changes all the time, and
It's usually night anyway.
yeah. So that's probably what I would do. But yeah, go right ahead.
Can I
Question.
offer a suggestion to that?
Please.
I have kind of when everything went virtual, my wife started making YouTube videos for her class, and so we have like a little studio set up in our basement, and tiny basement. So countertop lighting, you mount like under cabinets, you can actually mount on a wall facing you, and then you can take poster board and kind of put that, mounts the light nicely.
Poster board. Yeah.
To put in front of it so it's in your red.
No, so the countertop lighting is already very soft, right? So that's fine, and it's usually adjustable for brightness and color temperature.
Yeah.
Cheaply.
Cool.
And then if you get like a harsh shadow on one side, you can actually put the poster board on the side of that harsh shadow. The light kind of fills in almost a fill effectively.
Yeah.
And then that
Good.
costs me nothing, and I can put it right behind my monitor because I only have like this much space between me and the wall. Right? And so the countertop lighting is the wall right there.
All right, so having said all of this is my favorite lighting setup. I'm going to show you guys what I really use most of the time. Because this I keep set up in our studio, but anytime I need to travel, or even if it's just, just on a different location at church or whatnot, mainly what I do is Aperture makes these light domes, as they call them, and they are, as you can see here, they are just so easy to set up. In fact, it all folds down, and you just simply have to grab these steel rods or aluminum rods and just pop them up, and then all of a sudden it just comes already set up like this. And so it takes a whole 30 seconds to set up. And then what you'll do is you'll take off this cone right here. And
The cone doesn't get hot, huh?
not that hot, apparently. And let's see if I can do this in one take here. But, because I always have a problem with the angle, to be honest. But essentially it's a bow-end mount. So there's 3 here, 3 here. And you just line them up. And then it clicks and you turn it. And that's it. And then now, if we were to take this and once again go at our subject here. And go up. Yeah. So let's bring over our thing because that wire broke. All right, so sparking, gonna turn this on. And I would go something like that. Yeah, and very similar now that we have diffusion. Although, here's what's fun. You can play around with the angle. So the more in front of the subject, the less there is the contrast ratio, therefore less dramatic. But you can actually take the same softbox, and if you were to put it completely on the side, now I'd have to adjust the angle of the light. But you could do this even for just like a really dramatic, kind of look. Yeah, see, look at that right there. And in fact, that's what we did for Good Friday. And so this softbox here is not the cheapest thing in the world. It's like $220, so as much as the light. But what I'm saying is that for $400, you can have a light setup that would be like a legit pro light setup. And the best part of it all is that these things are just going to last for a number of years. And I just do one light. So all those shots that I showed earlier are just simply the one light because it is so soft and so diffused. That's all I need. Like everyone on YouTube since like 2012 or something has talked all about 3-point lighting. And I think for me, because especially with our studio shot, we have this right here. Let's go back a little bit. So like this one right here, since we already have the scoop light behind, already creates that hair light. So I don't need a hair light. And also, I don't really want, that's a little dramatic for me, but if we look at this one here, I don't really want much fill because I like the contrast ratio there. If we were to fill that side, then all of a sudden, we would lose everything that we worked for. Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, you started to get to it before when you were talking about the use of ring lights, and that was partially the way I was going. I guess the basis of my concern has been glasses.
Yes.
Your subject now doesn't have glasses. If she was wearing glasses, would the diffusion take care of that by itself? And
the angle.
Are there other ways in which you can, I've tried everything.
Yeah.
I got a ring light.
Okay.
It's an office setup.
Right.
I tried the diffuse method with the ring light. I tried, with kind of a counter thing. I mean, no matter what you do, it's a bane of recording. And I can record without it, but it's not me. Right?
Sure.
Glass. So what techniques, what suggestions do you have in any way to minimize any glare?
So this particular lighting setup, and even with the shower curtain, because really the shower curtain then becomes your source. This now becomes the source. But what I found is that it's still directional. And so that right there has, forget exactly the angle with the Cinedome, but it's probably like a 90-degree angle or something like that. So it's very much, there's a direction to it. And so as long as you could position it in a certain angle, because it's directional still, and then you're facing the camera, unless you move your head a whole lot to go this direction, which sometimes glare gets in my glasses whenever I do video work, but 9 out of 10 times you don't see any glare because it's directional and because I'm looking and because it's at a 45-degree angle on the side. And so that just might be one of the downsides of using a ring light, is that it unfortunately may not be directional. It might just kind of be like this wall of light that you can't really move around, if that makes any sense.
It does help bring ambient light, in general.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's exactly what I discovered. It's more helpful to bring more light to the room than to supplement something that's awkward from on top. But I see what you're saying. So the directional part is really kind of the key. It's not to put it right in front.
Yeah, that's certainly what we do. Yeah. So let me show you guys one quick tip on audio. So as far as audio goes, the worst thing to do is to use the mic on a camera or on a phone or webcam or whatever you're using. Instead, either get a camera that has XLR inputs on it. But honestly, even some of like the big boy cameras, like you spend $10,000 on a Red, and all it comes with is just the brain, as they call it. It does not come with XLR inputs, because they expect you at that point, if you're going to be spending that kind of money on camera, that you've already got audio figured out. And so what we did is we got this Tascam right here. What I love about it is that it can do 4 channels, and it also does phantom power. And in fact, it can do something that you could dual record, meaning that you could have it recording a second track that's slightly lower in volume. And so that's key, because whenever I say, okay, give me a sound check, give me a level, hello, my name is blah, blah, blah. Okay, go ahead, we're ready for you. Well, let me tell you about, and then you look at the audio levels and they're spiking all over the place. So it's really key about having that second dual audio level there, is that if they were to clip, then you still have it saved, which is fantastic. So I love that. Here's the smaller version of it, but same sort of deal. Could do phantom power, and the reason phantom power is important is that way you could do condenser microphones with it. So you can do, in this case, this guy right here is a cardioid condenser. I'm sorry, did I hit your foot there? I apologize. So this is a cardioid condenser mic. Rode makes it. It's called the NT5. And I absolutely love this for indoors because, so cardioid meaning that it has a heart shape as the pattern. And what's nice about it is that it costs $200, which again, it's not, you don't have to take out a loan or sell a kidney, all right? It's some money, but I've had this thing for a decade or so. And also, your church might already have something similar to this. Look around. I mean, if you guys have choir mics, probably have a cardioid condenser microphone. Steal it. Don't tell the worship leader. Right, ask your word. That's what I said. That's what I said. Correct. Have them set up the audio for you, is what I'm really hearing here. Also, what's nice about this particular microphone is that a lot of people like to use shotgun mics, and shotgun mics are great. So shotgun has a pattern in front, and actually, oddly, a little bit to the sides, a little bit behind. But it's very directional. The problem is, if you're in a very live room acoustically, like I'm just going to clap for 1 second. So hold on, here we go. So this one's not too bad. I mean, it's got the hard floors to it, but it's not that echoey of a room. But if you do have a room that's really echoey, shotguns are actually not that great for it, even though people think they are, because you come across phasing issues. Things can kind of go out of phase. And so a cardioid condenser mic won't do that. Shotguns, however, outside are amazing. So when we did the Christmas story, the tongue on the pole, we used just one shotgun mic between the two guys, and it sounded great. Although I heard every single plane that flew over, and it annoyed me. But with this, so similarly what I would do, and you can boom this guy out. So also everyone loves lav mics, and they're great. So your church already has lav mics, and so once again, ask the worship leader. But my whole deal with lavs, honestly, is, and I guess I'm just particular in this way, I don't want to see the lav. I'm just like that. It's a preference. But they're great because they're omnidirectional. And also it works out really well if you cannot boom. So let's say that you're in a setting where, like, let's say there's a big cross behind her, and we really wanted to get that cross. Well, we couldn't boom because then if we did that, then we couldn't get the cross in the frame. But I love booming. It's absolutely my favorite thing. And so you can use a broom pole if you wanted to. And I usually use a C-stand, but in this case, I just got a heavy-duty light stand and got this thing here, which I believe is actually what they use for fishing or something. But similarly, what I would do is try to get as close to the subject's mouth as possible to the source. And you would be surprised at how close you can get it. So like in this particular case, depending how tight we were on the shot, you could probably go like right here. Isn't that wild? Like you would never think. And people always say, the microphone's in the shot. I'm like, don't tell me how to do my job. No, I don't tell people that. But yeah, and I'm a little bit off center, but you can go right there. That could totally work. The other thing you could do is you can boom. There was a big cross behind her that we wanted to get. You can actually boom up. Now this stand's not great for that. Like if I had a much shorter stand, you could. But depending where the frame is, well, yeah, there we go. Depending where the frame is, you could probably get away with, something like that. But that's already too far from her mouth. But yeah, something like that. What's that?
Not to shout.
Yeah, right. But if you were getting the shot like that, you could boom from below. But I try not to because it's further away. But I did recently do something like that, and the audio still turned out pretty good. So that's my big tip: is use field recorders, especially if you get one with the dual record on it, and then to boom. Is there any questions so far on audio? I know that was like a whole bunch of quick things on it. Sorry, what's that?
What was the recorder that you had?
Oh yeah. So I think. Oh, I didn't put it on there. So it's the Tascam. I believe it's like the DR70. Hold on one second. Yeah, DR70D. D as in Delta. Yeah, Delta Romeo 70 Delta. DR70D. And then the cheaper version of it, because that's like 300 and this thing's like 100. The cheaper version, which just has less inputs, 2 instead of 4, is the DR40X. 40X. Yeah. Big fan. I'm sorry, what's that?
Manufacturing?
Tascam. Yeah, Tascam. Tascam. And there's a whole bunch of other brands out there, like Zoom makes the H4n. That's another one. But the preamps on these Tascams are really good. Preamps meaning that if ever you need to crank the volume on it, you get hiss. And the less hiss that there is, the better. So the preamps are just a little bit better on that. All right, everyone, let's give Annika a round of applause. Excellent. All right. But you could do labs, and I won't be mad. Oh, just really quickly on lighting. So you know how I was going on and on about hard lighting and why you shouldn't do it? Well, we chose to do it for a pre-recorded Good Friday service last year. So similarly, we had that light. Well, we didn't have that light yet because it wasn't out, but we used a similar version of it. But just one big 1K, 1,000 watt LED. And it just, look at the contrast here. And it was bright enough to even go to the subject over here and still have that really hard lighting. So if you're going for that kind of effect, then do it. This next shot here is something that we did in studio for the same service. And this was diffused. We used that Cinedome. But we just simply, rather than putting it at a 45-degree angle in front of the subject, we put it directly to the side of the subject to create those hard shadows, which we really enjoyed. So we talked about audio. Just the big deal here is just do not use the camera audio as much as possible. Try to use a field recorder. And even what these guys have, like this particular device right here, is a Tascam, and it's a little different because it's 1/8 of an inch. But same sort of deal. It's a lav going into this thing. I think this product is like $80. And so those are all things. And I will say this just really quickly about audio is I think people can be patient with visuals, but if they can't hear it, they're going to turn it off. And if you're showing something in service, they're going to emotionally turn it off, right? They're just going to check out. So a quick thing about editing is we have multiple takes a lot of times. And so the question is, well, how do we, if we, someone's doing a testimonial and they talk for 5 minutes, but you only want 3 minutes of it, so you got to do some slicing and dicing. The question is, well, how do you possibly, if you got 2 cuts together, what can you do? So here's kind of what it looks like. And I don't think there's audio to this, at least there wasn't yesterday. But essentially, that's this particular case. So we got her, and we have 2 cuts that we're using. And the question is, how is it that we could go from this cut to this cut? And so if we were just to play it as is, it would look something like this. And by the way, I will say this. God bless YouTube for really videos that we're almost now conditioned that this is okay. Most people actually might look at this and go, oh, whatever. In fact, there's some, especially like TikToks, right, that every 3 seconds is a jump cut, and it's just nauseating to watch. But for me, I'm not okay with this. So the thing you could do with this particular case is what I would do if I had no other resources, this is the only thing I had to work with. On the second cut, what I would do is I would crop in a little bit. So you could just simply go into the effects over here. Now this is using Premiere, but Final Cut, iMovie, whatever you have. Go to Scale, type in 120 or whatever. So that way you're pushing and you're cropping in just a little bit. And whenever you did that, then your brain kind of does a funny thing. That even though it's a totally different cut, by having a different angle to it, your brain is suddenly more okay with it than just a hard jump cut, if that makes any sense. The better thing that you could do is if you shot on 2 cameras. So you had 1 camera in front, 1 on the side, then what you could do is rather than just pushing in, go to a side angle. And once again, your brain is now really okay with it being a different angle. Even though that her hands may be here on one cut and down the other cut, your brain is just, you're not even going to think about it. The better thing to do, however, is to use something called B-roll. Now, B-roll is just simply action shots that you would take, and I use it to patch. Now, I use it for a couple reasons. Number one is there's something called viewer fatigue. So if you're watching a video, even if it's 2 minutes long, eventually your mind's going to start to wander because there's that viewer fatigue. By adding B-roll every 10 seconds or whatever, your brain all of a sudden is at a place where it goes, oh, okay, it kind of tunes back in. So when it's about to tune out, it tunes back in. But the real reason that I use it is because you can patch. So in this particular event, this women's event right here that was taken at a previous one that we're using to promote, which I think is pretty similar to like how you would do it on a movie in Final Cut, is just simply put the video clip right above it, and whenever you do it, you can just see how you would have no idea that the cut was there. As long as the audio was still all right. In fact, you can't probably, but just a little bit of a cross. But no idea. That's kind of my one tip on editing. And so the bottom line here is simply this. Start with what you have, invest in gear, and ultimately to inspire your audience. Now, we do have just a hot minute, and also you guys all now have my contact info, so you know how to get me. And I'd be glad to chat about things, but I also know that Jeff Shrink feeds you guys lots and lots of ice cream and coffee, and I don't want to hold you to that. But before we dismiss, are there any burning questions that you feel like the whole group can hear? Otherwise, I can stick around for a little bit. Yeah, go right ahead.
So these
Sure.
are all for recorded things?
Yes, that is correct.
So for all of the live streaming you missed,
Yes.
do you have any tips for improving the lighting or audio or live?
Yeah. Essentially, especially to, like right here, this is all post-production, but actually you could do all of this and still stream it. So you could have your camera that can go out from HDMI into either your computer if you're doing a software encoder, or if you have a hardware encoder, especially like the Blackmagic 810 minis, then you could absolutely plug that in for your camera, and either the lav mic or a boom mic like this, you would have to go through a what's the technical term for it? Interface. There you go. You have to go into some sort of interface, but then you can go into that little video switcher, and then just simply, whatever means that you have of live streaming, hit on air, and then now you've taken that live. So you can absolutely do that. And so the caveat to this, it out, mainly what I've talked about is improving the quality of your lighting and your audio in live stream, but not really going in, at least in this particular session, all the ins and outs of live streaming. But I believe, though, you could use all of these techniques, like even whenever you're looking at lighting. So if you're going to do theatrical lighting for your church, just be thinking about, okay, how is it that I could, if we have, a light shining above, how can we get that 45-degree angle to create a little bit of a contrast on the pastor's face? And that's totally a thing that exists. And so I think that for me, it's a lot of the same principle. Looking good and sounding good, just simply hit the live button. Did I dodge that question, or did I try to answer it? I'm trying to answer it. Okay, yeah. Stick around for a little bit. Well, I tell you what, go get ice cream and coffee. Thank you guys so much for hanging out.